Which Pac-12 quarterback are you going with for the rest of the season? We've got a message for Colorado players, what fans aren't seeing in David Shaw right now. And there's some serious football happening in LA, plus an extra crispy Yogi, just how we like him. It's happy hour. All right, Yogi.
Oh,
Better than that, baby.
Sounds so good.
Cheers to you.
What are you working with?
I switched it up this week. I'm going fresh squeezed for this week 6 edition of Happy Hour presented by Deschutes. What do you got? I don't even recognize what you got.
Yeah, I'm going with the King Crispy, right? It's an old school one. Got a little bite to it. I feel like I got a little bite to myself now that Wazoo is just sitting on the outside looking in, and Syracuse with that giant win over Wagner's in the top 25. So I'm a little crispy today.
I like that extra crispy Yogi. It's the best version that there is. Welcome back, everybody. Excited to be joined by Yogi Roth. I'm Ashley Adamson, as always, for our happy hour presented by Deschutes. Week 6, Yogs, it's here. And there are 16 undefeated teams in all of FBS, 2 of them residing in LA, UCLA and USC. And as we always do, we've got like 8,000 things to talk about, but heavyweight battle coming on Saturday between Utah and the Bruins. You got to see Utah in person. We'll talk about that matchup in a little bit, but your biggest takeaway from the weekend, let's start there with the thing that you're most buzzing about here as we head into week 6.
You know, I got a lot on my plate that made my list of what I'm buzzing about. But I think I got to keep it local.
Okay.
Football in LA, to your point. Like, went out this morning, went out to the beach, looked around with my wife and our oldest, and I'm like, LA's pretty cool right now. You know, it's 85 degrees. Waves are 3 to 4 foot, nothing too nuts. And teams are winning in LA. And Chip Kelly got the biggest win of his coaching tenure, in our opinion. I mean, I know what LSU was early last year, but what we think UW is within the league. So I'd say that. But I also lean towards the Arizona wideouts. They got me fired up because I'm calling the Oregon-Arizona game on Saturday.
I will tell you, I got to see that in person, Yogi, and we're standing there on the sidelines, and it was every catch was like better than the next. And we had Jaden Delore on set afterwards, and Greg Camarillo said, "What was your favorite moment?" And he like took him a minute. He couldn't quite. I think he went with Dorian Singer's like one-handed catch, but T-Mac's one-handed catch was, I could watch that thing on repeat. There were just so many amazing plays from that game. So yeah, I'm with you on that. And I think the thing that I am the most excited about, besides that I got to see that in person, and I'm with you on this, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, cheers to you, my man. I mean, we've been watching this guy compete for a long time, and everybody knows his journey, but he was sick of the noise. He was sick of all that noise.
Yeah,
he said so in his post-game press conference. You know, all those pundits and all those haters on social media saying you're the worst 4-0 team ever. You guys haven't played anybody. He was a man on a mission Friday against Washington. And again, I don't know how you pick out the favorite play, like the hurdle, making 2 defenders run into each other as you kind of waltz right into the end zone.
Yeah,
he had a great block. I mean, there were so many things that happened. 4 total touchdowns, player of the week. Hats off to you, DTR. And now the key is, can you keep it rolling against a Utah team that is pretty opportunistic that you got to see in person in Salt Lake City at homecoming, Yogs?
Yeah, look, you can't make any late throws against this team. Clark Phillips, you know, bunch of defensive player of the week awards, as he should. 3 picks, one of the house, and he was running the route for the receivers at times. He came on the show post game. Dude's elite. He's legit. I think he and Christian Gonzalez are playing at a ridiculous level. I put Mekhi Blackman in that conversation now in terms of corners in our conference. And what's interesting is you go back to last year, Dorian didn't play in Salt Lake City, right? He didn't play.
Right.
It was Ethan Garbers. So this is his first test against this defense in a minute, right? So I look forward to watching him compete. I think Utah has the best defense in the league. I've seen Oregon. I've seen SC. Obviously just saw Utah, you know, 3 teams that are playing really well statistically in different categories defensively. I think Utah has the best defense, and they're going to play a bunch of man coverage. And I think they're going to try to bring a little bit of heat. They'll be creative in how they do it. And this is going to be a straight up execution game for DTR. This is, I don't want to be like too dramatic, but like you really
be
think
dramatic.
about it,
That's what we're about. We're about the drama.
Like, well, this is why you come back, bro. Like this is the biggest game in his career, right? Think about it. He didn't play at Oregon. a couple years ago, right? Like there were some times where like he hasn't been healthy to play or COVID or whatever. Like this is his biggest stage. It's at home. Everybody's going to be watching. Everybody will looking at all of his highlights. Like we're going to be able to see what he's about. And I love it for him because this is why he came back. Like he just came on the It Factor this week podcast and he's measured, right? Like he's a vet. So it should be best on best. I don't think this is a game when we look back on this next week and we pop open a beer. We're not going to say who played poorly. I think it's going to be like one of those, did the game run out of time? Like who made an opportunistic play? But this is a huge stage for Chip, for Dorian, for this team. And you know me, Ash, I'm probably been the highest guy in America on UCLA. So we'll see.
You have been on that train from the beginning and last year too. I know you believe in what Chip's building over there. And it's hard to, and to DTR's point, you know, it was easy when they were 4-0 and everyone's saying, well, they haven't beaten anybody. And they, you know, South Alabama took them down to the wire, but they showed that they were legit on Friday. And if we're going to talk about DTR putting the team on his back and doing some special things, I think we also have to mention in that same breath, Cam Rising, who, you know, he loses Brant Keithy, his top target. And I feel like that was a game that he just willed the offense to win that game. That 24-yard touchdown run where he's juking guys and stiff arming them all the way down the sideline. Like that was, it was impressive. So you were there, you saw it, you know, better than I do, but I feel like watching those two quarterbacks kind of go at it, it's going to be fun on Saturday.
Yeah. I think if there's a matchup at home to watch, I'm just guessing here, but I'd imagine Kenny Churchwell plays a lot for UCLA. He can play safety, nickel linebacker. They have to eliminate the design runs of Cameron Rising because he's not just winning on scrambles. Like he's doing his version of Caleb Williams at times for sure. Like he did that last week, but he's also winning with scheme. And I think you have to match up somebody against him across the line of scrimmage. And Utah needs to run the ball. Like they need to run the ball with success because what we don't know is if they're built to come from behind yet.
Right.
We saw Devon Vele elevate. Solomon Enos didn't play. Talked to him on the field in pregame. I'd assume he'll be ready to go this week. But Keithy's gone. Mekhi Bernard. I'd expect him to have a much more elevated role. Like this dude can do everything. He's getting back to 100%. So I think it's going to be cool, man. It's going to be fun to watch Andy Ludwig go up against Coach McGovern. And I'm glad it's early because our game's at 6. I'll be able to watch this one at 12:30 when it kicks off.
I love that. And you mentioned Caleb Williams. I guess my buzzkill for the week is that USC committed a turnover. I thought we were going to go the whole season, no turnovers. Come on, what happened? But honestly, though, shout out to Caleb Williams. I think, yeah, he threw a pick in it was the third quarter, I think, against ASU. But he was able to bounce back after a shaky game. I think his worst game as a Trojan against Oregon State, in part because of Trent Bray's defense. But his O-line wasn't healthy, wasn't protecting him as much as, you know, maybe I'm sure he would have liked at times. But he just, same thing as Cam, it felt like he was just willing his team and making the plays. He can be magic when he pushes the right buttons.
Yeah, I was playing the game with my TV crew, like Ted Robinson and Molinari last night of like, so if you just had to pick a quarterback today for the rest of the year, like who do you take? And I think it's hard. Like when you look at like, you know, the body of work from everybody, right? Jane Delore is thriving. 5 games with Jed Fish, right? Bo Nix, Cameron Ward, like they've had their moments.
Yeah.
You reference Cam Rising, DTR, you know, it's still hard for me to believe what we're seeing at Stanford. Like I think they're better than what we've seen. But there's just a lot of talent at that position, to your point. And Caleb Williams, he puts on his cape. And USC's schedule, you know, they get Wazoo at home, right? They only go to Utah. Like their road games aren't dramatically challenging when you look at some of the tough places to play and who they miss. So you're right. Caleb was freakish. I love watching him bounce back. My buzz kill, I had 3 on my list. I'll get off the fence. My 3 were Washington losing on the road. Surprised in the style in which they lost defensively. Chance Nolan getting injured.
Yeah.
And interception still being a thing at Oregon State over the last 2 weeks. But I'm going to go with probably Captain Obvious here. And I'm going to go with the firing of Carl Durrell. Like, it's just a buzzkill because, you know, our role, we get to know these guys differently than anybody at any other network, right? Because they let us in a little bit more. We get to meet them and kind of understand their ethos and their purpose and all the catchphrases that they dive into and talk to their players about them. And I think maybe as we get older, Ash, you know, you haven't hit 30 yet, I don't think. But as I'm in my 40s, what I just learned is that like so many people get affected. And I understand the nature of the business and you got to win and all that, but it's still a buzzkill when you get that alert or you get that text from somebody at Colorado saying like, yep, the press conference is at 6:00 Pacific or whatever. And he just got released. Chris Wilson got released. So that was me, because those guys were great to us and they still will be great to us, but it's a bummer when you see that go down. And, thankfully for them, they're on a bye week.
Yeah. And I think the reality is when you look at these early season firings, right? And obviously now we're not even at week 6 and we've got 2 interim coaches in the Pac-12. And by the way, the Pac-12 isn't the only one. We'd need a case of beer to talk about what Wisconsin did this weekend in firing Paul Chryst. But to me, I think it comes down to the nature of where college football is right now. And that December early signing day, you can't wait. I think it's harder and harder and harder to wait until the end of the season to make decisions. And so whether, I'm not going to say that should be changed or shouldn't be changed, but I think it's just the nature of the reality of where we are right now and the pressure that all of these athletic departments feel to win and to win right now. I think it was pointed out recently, it might've even been John Canzano wrote an article about Chris Hill, the athletic director at Utah. Kyle Whittingham went through a couple of average subpar seasons and he stuck with them. And thank goodness he did, because it takes a little while to build things. Chip Kelly, a lot of people wanted him out last year, and now the Bruins have won 8 in a row. So patience is not something that our culture is very good at. Certainly I struggle with it too as a parent, but I just think that you're right. It's a buzzkill. And I know that Colorado, Rick George certainly did what he felt was necessary to do. They're 0-5. There was no progress being made. I will also say on the bright side, Mike Sanford, the offensive coordinator who Pac-12 fans are familiar with, and he's had a lot of different experience. He's been a head coach at Western Kentucky. I saw him on the field right before the game started in Arizona. And I was just struck because he was and we've known him for a really long time. He's a great guy. He's got a great football mind, but he was just so calm and so even, and just felt like, he's like, it's been hard. And he was one of 6 new assistants that just moved their entire family to Boulder to try and rebuild this program. So I was taken though by how just calm and even he was. And he said, we're going to figure this out. And there was something about his presence in that moment. It's hard for me to describe that when I saw that he was named, interim acting head coach, I just thought, okay, I think they're in good hands. And I think he brings a lot of energy, and I'm excited to see what he's able to do the rest of the way.
Yeah. I loved what he said in his press conference about, my first job is to love these guys up. And I think he said his first day on the job as the interim guy was to meet with every player from 7 a.m. till whenever he had to, just to see where they were at. And props to him to doing that. And I believe this, and I'm stealing this from my partner, Ted Robinson, is that when a team loses hope, that's when you have to make a change. And now that a change is made, you have to instill hope. And I think that is the job that we've seen Sean Iguano do at Arizona State. That is a job that I believe we'll see from Mike Sanford. Now, neither one of those teams are as talented as Utah or USC or the teams that are thriving in this league at pseudo midpoint of the season, but you can still play really good collective football in a sport that requires 11 to be connected. And that's what makes this game great. So I hate to do it again, but put my speech on repeat here, Ash, of like, to the players at Colorado, your only job, trust us, is to compete to uncommonly unite, because you will remember your reaction in the bye week when you lost your head coach and how you spun this season forward for the rest of your life. And if you don't do it in a positive manner, you're going to regret it, because all of you aren't going to continue to play. Like, some of you may leave, some of you may graduate, some of you may retire. Like, some of you may get beat out next year with new players that come in. Like, so capitalize on this, because there's no other option, and you'll love it, because the 100-odd players in that locker room will come back in 5 years and 10 years and 20 years at homecoming, like you and I do at our respective schools, and you connect around that.
Yep.
And that is what I'm sure Mike Sanford and company are preaching to that program.
No doubt about it. And they'll go to work in the bye week and we'll see how the rest of the season plays out. But I'd put that speech on repeat and just have it played every day around in every locker room, Yogi, because I'm with you. I think there's so many things that we get caught up in, wins and losses and stats and all the rest, but there's so much more going on inside the locker room. And it's about the relationships that these young people are building with both each other and with their coaches. On that same thread, I just want to say one thing to watch out for this week that I'm excited about. I'm going to give a little shout out here. I just got this in the mail. My defensive line shirt, Stanford hosting Oregon State. It is Stanford's mental health awareness game. And they're going to feature Solomon Thomas's foundation, the defensive line. And Stanford fans, I'm sure, know Solomon Thomas's story. For those of you who don't know his story, I highly recommend going to find out about it. He lost his older sister, Ella, to suicide in 2018. And since then, he and his parents have just dedicated themselves to, work around mental health, ending the stigma. The defensive line, they do so much incredible work. The mission is to end the epidemic of youth suicide, and especially in particular, suicide of young people of color. Martha and Chris, his parents, are going to be there, and they're going to be honored. So Yogi, you and I know we've had this conversation a lot of different times, both on and off air, but how critical it is for programs to take the time to put some light on, this conversation and the mental health conversation in general, because we can't have it enough, and it's going on in real time with people and young people around the country.
Yeah. Well, they should listen to the conversation you had with Solomon's mom on your podcast, Your Mom. It is powerful. It is amazing. It is engaging. It's enlightening, and it's educational. And I'll say this about David Shaw. I know he's getting a lot of heat for wins and losses. I believe in this phrase, which is front load. And I think that David Shaw front loads real skills as good or better than anybody in America. So when a freshman shows up on campus, they have to sign the Set the Expectation pledge, right? Which is the Brenda Tracy pledge, to make sure that you can really be the expectation on campus. And when people see a football player walk into a room or a party after a game, they feel safe. He's making sure he's educating and connecting to his players on mental health, as you just referenced. I mean, he's front loading skills. So when players are challenged, like Ryan Burns was challenged when he was beat out at the quarterback spot years ago by Keller Christ, he instantly sought out help. I share that story because he shared it in a book I just wrote. That, to me, has a value to it. And I think while Stanford isn't finding the success we've become accustomed to them having on the field, it's not like David Shaw doesn't know football, right? He will capture and recapture the greatness that we've seen there. It might take longer than others due to the reality of college football and the landscape we're in right now. But what he is doing in terms of developing players, remember, 98% of them don't go to the league. He's developing these young men at a unique level. I just ask Stanford fans, just kick back a little bit. And I understand your frustration. So does he. But he's doing a lot of things right. And I believe in him, and he'll get the football right.
Yogi, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think I just want to underscore your point there, because it's not like David Shaw and his entire staff forgot how to coach. This is by and large the same staff that won 3 Pac-12 championships, 2 Rose Bowls. They didn't just all of a sudden forget what is required to build a championship team and a program. And I think the bigger issue, and you nailed it on the head, is that Stanford, and there are other schools in this category, but Stanford is at the top of this list. They are falling victim to the current state of what's going on in college football right now, where the transfer portal and NIL rule everything. And we're watching teams. I mean, think about the portal. We're watching teams, and we've seen it in the Pac-12, completely rebuild their rosters overnight thanks to the portal. And I'm for the portal. I'm for NIL. I want to be clear about that. But those options, they don't exist at Stanford. At admissions, they don't mess around. Stanford has 1 transfer on their roster right now. They've got 3 grad transfers in the history of the program: Brennan Scarlett, Isaiah Sanders, and Patrick Fields. They all got into grad school entirely on their own, had nothing to do with Stanford. So to your point, Stanford's still doing it the old fashioned way, through recruiting, finding, developing, as David Shaw always calls them, the Stanford men. But even once they do that, then they have to hope that other programs don't come and pick off that talent with big NIL offers. We know inducements aren't allowed technically, but we also know the reality of what's going on, Yogs. And when you don't have an NIL collective and university, they support education around NIL, but it is different at Stanford than the booster money that is flowing at other programs around the country. So I just think, I think it's important context, and I'm not making excuses. I'm not saying that, Stanford fans should be okay with a 1-win team at this point in the season. Nobody's okay with that. Nobody. But I just think it's important to remind people to sort of open your eyes, step back, as you said, and realize the road that we're going down in college football. And if nothing changes, either with the rules or enforcement or with university approaches, teams like Stanford that used to compete for championships every single year, they are playing against a stacked deck. They're playing in a totally different sandbox. Use whatever analogy you want. And I don't know how it's all going to unfold at Stanford, but I've never believed in a coach and a staff more than I believe in David Shaw and Stanford. He's done something there that nobody else has ever done. And they are some of the best people that we know in all of college athletics. So I'm hoping and believing that they are going to sort it out. But it is important as you send out your snarky tweets and, reporters taking shots as they always do, to understand the higher level of what's going on and how it's impacting Stanford, because I know I've only gone on for 5 minutes, but I could go on for about 15 minutes more about all the different things. So thank you for coming to my TED Talk, Yogi. I appreciate you.
I love it. Well, I'll say this. I'm pumped to see that go down on the farm as well. And I'm looking forward to the games in LA and the one in Arizona. I believe this, that Jed Fish's team, they get Oregon at home, then they get SC at home. Those games are going to be a challenge for both of those opponents. There's going to be upsets. We haven't seen it yet this season, right? I don't know if I call UCLA an upset over UW. I know the ranking was what it was, but the 2 undefeated teams, we're going to see them as they come. I'm looking forward to Saturday. I think it's going to be a whale of a day. We're going to learn a ton this week and next week. And the conference that has 5 teams in the top 25, by the way, we don't have as many teams as 2 other leagues, just a heads up there. 3 other leagues, actually. It's pretty impressive. So I'm looking forward to Saturday in LA. I think we're going to learn a ton about these 2 programs.
Yeah, I can't wait. There's so much to talk about as the week unfolds. We will be at ASU in Tempe. Excited to be out there. Our coverage starts at noon Pacific time. And I'm excited to see, the Sun Devils welcome in the Huskies, who are coming off their first loss under Kalen DeBoer. Fun note for you. Kalen DeBoer has only lost 10 total games in his entire head coaching career. And he's only lost back-to-back games once, and that was at the very end at Fresno. He lost his last 2 games. So I just think that this is a guy who has won at every level and at every stage. And I'm looking forward to seeing how the Huskies come out and how dialed in they are in the desert. Yogi, as always, my friend, it is a pleasure.
Nice and crispy.
Yeah, I'm going to try that one.
I got you.
We'll see you next week, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.